Ati hei mauri ora, ke whai korore honore hariruia ke i honga mano, matua tama wairua tapu me ngāna hera pono ko te māngai hei tautoko mai ai nei āchenei ai. Nō reira kei te hui hui tātou i rungi i tēnei rā whakatūwheratanga. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā poroporo wā ki ngā mate maha, ngā mate katoa ko pōwhiritia ki tua te ārai. Nā koutou i tangi, nā mātou i tangi, nā tātou katoa, nō reira te hunga wairua, takoto mai, kei rungi te teiteitanga, me te rangatiratanga o te raki. Kia tātou te hunga ora, e ngā mana i ngā reo, e rau rangatira mā, tēnei rā tuahuriri, e mihi kau atu, e mihi aroha ki a koutou. Nā mahara mai whakatau mai i rungi te kārango tēnei a tātou huihuinga, nā mai anō ki tō tātenei taone o Kraitiana, nā mai ki ngā Pākihi whakateketeka o Waitaha, nā mahara mai ki te waka auraki, ki te waka Māui, ki te Waipounamu. Ko ngā wawata, ko ngā hua, hei whakakaha i te whanaungatanga kei wanganui a koutou, i roto i tēnei tūmomo huihuinga. Nō reira, tēnei rā ka tuake anō ki te mihi atu ki a koutou, ati hei mauri ora. Firstly, we give thanks to the Creator and Author of all life, our holy and faithful angels, as confirmed by God. Then, we've gathered here and we welcome you here to our whenua, or to our land. We welcome you to our city of Christchurch. We welcome you to ngā Pākihi whakateketeko o Waitaha, the Canterbury Plains. Welcome to the canoe of Aoraki, te waka Aoraki, to the canoe of Māui, te waka Māui, ki te Waipounamu. Welcome to the South Island. We hope that your conference is successful and it works towards the betterment of our future generations. So, just want to welcome you, extend our blessings to you all and hope that you enjoy your conference. Nō reira, nau mahara mai, welcome, twice welcome, thrice welcome, te hei mauri ora. Te whetu marama, marama o te hahi ratana, ratana te whetu marama, marama o te hahi ratana. Nō reira, kāpiti hono tātai hono rātou mā koe whiturangi tia ki tua te ārai, takoto mai kei rungi te teiteitanga me te rangatiratanga o te raki. Kia tātou te hongo ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia koe.
Thank you, Marka. Thank you, Liz. Appreciate the opening you've provided for us today. Tēnā koutou katoa, kua hui hui mai mō te kaupapa ne, no reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming along. It's great to see a packed house for Christchurch NZ's Economic Insights Breakfast. We've been holding these every 6 months or so. This is the first one since I've taken over my new role as General Manager for Innovation and Business Growth for Christchurch NZ. It's great to see several familiar faces in the audience. And for those of you I've yet to meet, I'd like to take the chance to give you a quick introduction on me. There we go, there's a slide with my name on it. I've been leading the Innovation and Business Growth team at Christchurch NZ for 3 months now, but before that I spent 9 years with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, based primarily here in Christchurch, but also offshore in San Francisco. In my time at NZT, I was really privileged to partner with businesses across all of our sectors, and all sizes, from pre-revenue right up to multi-billion-dollar companies. NZTE as an organisation really tries to support companies to truly understand a customer need and how to build a USP or a competitive position to really win in a global niche. So the joy for me in working alongside these companies has shown me that New Zealand businesses can win globally when they're agile, when they're innovative, and when they're hungry and they really understand their customer needs. And most importantly, when they've got the right people and the right skills in their team. I also know that Christchurch is a hidden gem of innovation across multiple sectors. And my vision for business growth in Ōtautahi is a city where people and businesses innovate and grow and look to regenerate. Our economic system is creative, inclusive, and it positions the city to compete and win globally in areas where it has positions of strength in a way that's good for the world. So, as my role as MC today, I'd like to give you an overview of this morning's event. I'm going to give you a brief update on the Christchurch economy, and then we'll get into the key theme of the day, the future of work, and what we all need to be thinking about now to prepare for the workforce of the future. We'll hear presentations from our three panellists, followed by a panel discussion with our speakers, which you'll have a chance to ask some questions, and we'll look to wrap by 9:30. But before we go any further, I need to review the health and safety information for this amazing venue we're in. So toilets, if you haven't found them already, the closest toilets are located in the main foyer. You just need to exit the room, walk past the stairs into the middle of the main foyer. The toilets will then be on your right. Emergency exits. If the alarms are to sound, please exit the building using the nearest available exit. If any of the exits should not be used, they will denote a red no exit sign above them. And the assembly point is behind us in Victoria Square. Venue staff are well trained and they'll provide assistance during any emergency. And can you please follow their directions at all time? Right, now let's turn to the economic state of the city. So economic confidence was pessimistic across most of New Zealand regions during the September quarter. Although pessimistic, confidence in Canterbury was above the New Zealand average and significantly higher than in Auckland and Otago in particular. Some of the thinking behind this is because house prices have declined by comparatively smaller amounts in our region, and we have a great strength in primary industries, and commodity prices and need for that is really, really high. So Canterbury is expected to emerge as one of the better performing regions in the coming year due to the benefits of this agricultural productivity and particularly the return of international tourism. We saw obviously thousands of people hit Christchurch City with the first cruise ship recently. We also have high levels of employment, which we'll talk to in a bit more detail shortly. These positive factors are really expected to help offset some of the drag on confidence caused by the ongoing cost of living pressures, the inflation we're seeing every day, and the rising interest rates. Looking forward to the Reserve Bank's announcement in a couple of days. So business growth. The percentage growth in the number of businesses across Greater Christchurch was higher than that of New Zealand as a whole. The number of businesses in Greater Christchurch increased by over 3,000 in the year to June 2022, and 70% of these were in Christchurch City. What's interesting is the sectors that experienced the largest increase in the number of employees were financial and insurance services and utilities, with employees in both of these industries increasing by 9%. What's really pleasing is that these two sectors are some of the most productive in Christchurch, based on our estimates of GDP output per employee. So on average, employee numbers in Greater Christchurch grew 4% across all industries in the June 2022 year. This next slide is pretty exciting for me. So startups. So a key way we can grow our economy and look after our people is having a strong innovation ecosystem. And it's in an area where Christchurch NZ and all of the startup ecosystem players have been putting a lot of focus, and we've already seen significant impact. So the startup ecosystem in Christchurch is actually humming. Last year we moved up a staggering 168 places in global rankings. We're now the 228th best city in the world for startups, having surpassed Wellington to make the second highest ranking in New Zealand. This is really big. This is the biggest jump in rankings the report's authors have ever seen. So Startup Blink's Global Ecosystem Index ranks the startup ecosystems of 1,000 cities across 100 countries. And the index is used by hundreds of thousands of readers across the globe to aid decision-making around relocation, investment, and research. So I'd like to give a big shout out to the people involved in that ecosystem. In any way, you're doing amazing work, and we really appreciate what you're doing for our city and our future. Labour force. So no surprises to anyone here. You won't go, wow, unemployment remains at record lows. And labour force participation is at a near record high, above 73% locally. Just to give you some context, the highest labour force participation rate we've seen in Christchurch over the last 20 years was 74.3%. That was in 2016, and that was artificially inflated due to the earthquake recovery stimulus. So that number is massive. In the September quarter, over 9,000 additional people were employed compared to the previous 3 months. 80% of these people were previously not in the labour force, i.e. people of working age who previously weren't looking for work. So that's almost 8,000 people who've been pulled into the labour force. Christchurch NZ, we like to claim a little bit of credit for that achievement. And if you're at our last couple of Economic Insights breakfasts, you'll have heard about Power Up, which was our campaign to bring underemployed and unemployed women into the workforce. And a bit of chest thumping, that campaign has recently won an award from Economic Development New Zealand. So cheers to the team behind that great mahi. Unemployment at record lows, wage inflation has risen to 3.7% for the year to September, with average housing earnings up 7.4% over the same period, showing how market rates have risen as a business seeks to attract and retain staff. The number of jobs advertised online hit a record high in the September quarter, up 14% for the same time in 2021. Housing affordability. So house prices continue to fall across the country, although declines within the Canterbury region have been much lower than New Zealand as a whole, down 6% from peak in Canterbury compared to 12% across New Zealand. Christchurch is known for being the most affordable major metropolitan area in New Zealand, with the median house price in Christchurch around 18% lower than the New Zealand median in September. This, along with changes in work culture and remote working, which have been accelerated by COVID, make us attractive to talent, and we've been pulling workers from Auckland and Wellington. The graph compares average house prices to income ratios by area, with a higher score meaning worse housing affordability. Christchurch's average house price is around 7 times average income versus 8.5% for New Zealand. But although in that context, I think we all understand the term affordable is a relative one only. It's still far too high for our younger people looking to get into the market. Population change. According to Stats New Zealand 2022 population estimates, the population of our cities is shrinking while the surrounding areas are growing rapidly. Border restrictions and domestic relocation meant that 10 of New Zealand's 13 cities experienced negative net migration in the June 2022 year. Net domestic migration fell minus 15,000 in Auckland, for example. While Christchurch's city population is estimated to have shrunk by 0.2%, which I'll give you that in real terms, about 700 people, domestic migration into Selwyn and Waimakariri saw the population of Greater Christchurch grow 0.8% overall, so just over 4,000 people. There is also opportunity for the local economy to benefit from regional population growth, with Canterbury experiencing the second largest overall population increase behind the Waikato in the June 2022 year. And this was, as you all know, with the border situation largely driven by domestic migration. So we had an estimated 2,500 people relocating into Canterbury. And now that borders have reopened, we hope to see more migration, and we're also looking at opportunities, how we attract more remote workers into the city, into Canterbury for the lifestyle we have and love. So I'm finishing up very shortly, which will bring joy to a lot of people. Just summarising what we've talked through. So what's the big picture story here? Given recent economic headlines, on-the-street confidence is looking a bit shaky. But if you peel back that data, there are a lot of positives for Christchurch. Business growth is strong, our startup sector is rocketing ahead, and over the last 2 quarters, almost 8,000 new workers have started jobs in the city in the last quarter alone. COVID and remote work, along with comparatively affordable housing, has made Christchurch more attractive to talent and employers. Job ads are at record highs, Yet despite the growth in our labour force, we're still crying out for workers, for those great humans to do those jobs. Clearly, this is the time to be talking about the future of work. I hope this brief overview has provided you with some insight, and I would like to remind you that our Economic Insights team produced an economic data dashboard on christchurchnz.com. This is live, up-to-date quarterly data at your fingertips. This dashboard provides quick stats and the ability to check how key economic metrics across 5 major areas: economic activity, employment, business housing, and regional comparison. We also like to track nationally and locally some of that data for you, so it's a very useful resource. We also have other resources available for you. At the Economic Update Breakfast earlier this year, we've heard the challenges employers are facing in recruiting talent. To attract talent, employers recognise the need to just not sell the employment opportunities, but the lifestyle as well. As a result, we've put together a toolkit for you, employers, to use to sell the city. What this includes is videos of people who have relocated here and how they've found it, images of the city, a suite of infographics on the economic and lifestyle selling points of the city, such as the number of biking tracks, average house prices, proximity to ski, and what our growth sectors are. A PowerPoint targeting potential talent and detailing the career and lifestyle benefits, and our key city messages so we can all use the same terms and same messages when we're selling the city. So we'll be going live with this next week, and we'll send out a link to the toolkit with the follow-up comms from this event. So please use it. We think it's a great tool. We're about to hear from Tracy Cotter-Martin, Associate Director, Futures, Insights and Experiences at Datacom, Hini Punamu Apanui-Ba, Rangatahi Researcher at Tokono Tiraki, and Ishan Brailsford, a member of the Regional Skills and Leadership Group. After their brief presentations, I'll host a panel discussion with them. Now, if you'd like to ask a question, we'll have roving mics in the audience, but if you'd rather not ask the question yourself, you can text it to the number on your name badge to have it asked for you. Now, I'd like to hand over to Tracy, who will talk to a major piece of research she's completed examining macro trends, industry pressures and mindsets, and how these inform the way we work and meet the needs of customers. So welcome, Tracy.
Good morning. Brief is the key word here. So I'm going to try and sum up the future of work for you in 10 minutes. There we go. So we, as Martin mentioned, started a piece of work a year ago to truly unravel what the future of work was. Our observation was everybody was saying the future of work like it was this great thing and then talking about remote and hybrid work, but actually if it was being talked about globally, there had to be something bigger and more meaningful than just this idea that I can work on a laptop from somewhere that's not the office. And so the piece of work was really to unpick what do we mean by the future of work, what is driving it, and what does it mean for the future of the way we think about coming together to solve problems for true human and societal impact. So the first thing that we discovered is actually there's this continuum, and this isn't rocket science, this will be obvious to you, but it's important to start with. What we know is that there is an enormous macro trend around Industry 4.0, which talks about things like robotics and automation and hyperconnectivity and Internet of Things, some big digital concepts that organisations nod at, but actually our ability to harness those and create change and bring equity into the workplace has been reasonably low. And so there is an idea that is moving from Industry 4.0 to Society 5.0, which talks about how do you create true human impact through technological advancement. And because of that tension where we've got this rising trend of change that is coming at a very significant level, that then drives out some market pressure, creates in part opportunity, but it also creates an enormous amount of disruption, which at an organisational level means that often you're being challenged to prioritise and think about things that might not have been on your agenda had those market changes not happened in the first place. And then at the middle of all of that is a person trying to do a job, trying to come to work, to feel value, create value in the work that they do, and receive value in the work that they do. And their ability to do that and be upskilled, reskilled, rechanged in this continuum of change will impact organisations' ability to fulfil their goals, which then drives out market change and largely impacts where we go at a macro level. So this complex ecosystem of inside out and outside in cause and effect is driving out what we see to be future of work. And so what I thought I would focus on with you today is the market influences. So I'm going to try not to rove too much, but that's going to be hard for me. So scarcity of resource. So we've come from an age of abundance thinking. It has been pervasive. We've seen a problem, we've solved it. There's something to fix, we've fixed it. There's a business to start, we've started it. We've just had from Martin around this rise in entrepreneurial thinking. But the challenge with abundance is that there is no cap on it. And what we've seen happen over time is this increase in scarcity. And we see it pervasively in the media around climate change and environmental shift, but fundamentally scarcity is richer than that. There is a wonderful saying in Te Ao Māori, or a concept around kaitiakitanga, which I just love. It is about the balance between all things and the protection of those things for intergenerational good, that you leave something and protect it for the betterment of those coming after you. And when we think about scarcity, that means we're talking about people. It means we're talking about the land and the things that live in the land and how we treat those things. And so scarcity and abundance thinking don't go together. We are in a state where people are overworked and tired. They are bombarded by change. They don't have choices that they want to make around where they're heading and what they want to do in ways that they have control over. We have challenges around housing. We have challenges in inflation. There is a $90 billion infrastructure problem recently published by Te Waihanga, which is our infrastructure commission, to fix the infrastructure that we have today. And that is without thinking about what a modern community needs to look like. We are seeing projections that say over the next few years, over half of the population growth will be in the major centres. And everybody nods at that and says, yes, well, that makes good sense. We all know that that's nothing new. But it is new because that means half of the population growth is also rural and remote. It means that that infrastructure spend of $90 billion is not enough. The spread of globalisation means that we are more hyper-connected than we have ever been. I can learn about food and culture, I can click a seat and get on a plane and go somewhere else. We are increasingly connected. We've gone from a very dispersed people to becoming a diverse people where we can share ideas easily. As we spread out into regional reaches of Aotearoa, New Zealand, those expectations of what we have access to will not change. In fact, they will increase. And the challenge around the future of work is how do you create connection between remote communities in an age of scarcity? Which leads really nicely into this third concept of harnessing increased pace. So if we think about pace, there's an interesting conundrum here, which is kind of highlighted in some of this startup data that you provided, Martin. In 2007, there were 3 players in the streaming world: Hulu, Netflix, and Prime Video. 2022, 49, and it's not unique. And so what that tells us is that we've got this challenge around scarcity and how we think about resources and how we think about solving problems and making them accessible. We have challenges around how people are going to live, how they want to work, where they're going to be, and how we create communities that can thrive with a limited pocket of investment, which is compounded by ongoing and increased pace. And so I think the best way to illustrate this for you is if we think about the start of technological change, Industry 1.0, took 100 years to get to electricity from that initial technological advancement. To get from electricity into the information age was just shy of 100 years. From 3.0 to 4.0, we're talking around about 60. We are currently Industry 4.0, and as projected, we will move into this concept of Society 5.0 in less than 20 years. And what is really confronting about that, whilst exciting, because it will create enormous opportunity, is that it will be preceded by disruption. And in that, the shelf life of a unique idea will become shorter. And what that means is that we need to go back to the thing that is truly important, which is our people. If we have this opportunity to harness technological change, what are we doing to build beautiful experiences? What are we doing to optimize the unique parts of our human brain where we can imagine things and make them so and optimize human creativity to really realize true societal change and impact? And what that means is that we need to bring the role of human and digital closer together rather than it being one or the other. You may have been looking at all of this and thinking, she is talking about people sitting in an office. This is a knowledge work conversation. Half of us don't do that. We have people in our organisations that are out working with other people on the land, in spaces. The interesting thing about all of this change is it is going to fundamentally challenge the concept of a knowledge worker, which has been primarily about people that work with information and at computers. What it means is the bounds of a knowledge worker will shift. As we look to harness the disruption created by those three market tensions, we will see a shift where the knowledge worker will expand to include functional, skilled and information workers. The idea of actually having automated certain and rote work will mean we augment our workforces in different ways to create opportunities for our people to create, receive and feel value in the work that they do. The role of skilled workers will broaden out into the knowledge and information sector, and we will see an increase in the amount of human, varied and cognitive-based work that allows us to train machines, create less bias in AI and machine learning to increase our ability to adapt to change. And so when we think about that from a future of work perspective, I think the thing to come back to with all of this is it is about change. We are going to be constantly evolved in an evolving world because we want to address scarcity, because we want our kids and our families and those that we care about to grow up in communities that can thrive in modern ways that are safe and warm and engaging. We want to harness pace to continue to allow the human race to live in a world that is healthy, that creates opportunities and allows us to realise our own potential. And so at the heart of all of that change is a person, and the thing to remember is we want to feel valued. Do you know your people? Do you know their purpose, and are you providing them with a sense of safety? Is their identity at the core of your business? Are they able to create value? Can they make connections between complex ideas and simple ideas and with people? Can they apply learning to those connections? And importantly, are they able to take an action? Do you have an empowered workforce that can create value because there is information that is valid and important to them? And lastly, do you have an organisation where people can receive value? Are you enabling how they want to work, who they want to work with, and what they need to work on? Do they have access to the right people, to the right resources and the right support within your organisation to realise this value quotient that will underpin the future of work? The last thing that I'll leave you with is if you don't have a plan for these things, please make one. The future of work is an oxymoron. It is today. It is not the future. The future of work is now. It is happening to us today. Those organisations that are going to thrive in this complex ecosystem are those that are embracing beyond policy, beyond the idea of remote work, to truly think about their people and how they can embrace change for the betterment of the societies that they operate in. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Hanipanam. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. And tuatahi ake e tika ana kia tuku mihi ki te mana o tēnei whenua kia ngai tuahuriri, tēnā koutou o tira tēnā tātou te kanohi o te ora, kua pupi mai nei tēnei rā. My name is Hine Pounamu Apanui Ba, and I am a rangatahi researcher at Tokona Te Raki. And today I'll be talking a lot about we. And so firstly, I might just explain who we are. We are an iwi-led social innovation lab that sits under the mana of Te Runanga o Ngaitahu, and we work to combine social innovation tools and techniques with mātauranga Māori, kaupapa Māori methodologies. We do this with the vision of equity in employment, education and income for Māori by 2040. In order to have a vision of equity is to acknowledge that there is a current lack of it, and the consequences of that lack of equity, hopefully I'll be able to explain, will be felt by us all in the coming future. At the crux of it all is that we believe all people deserve choice, access and autonomy when deciding on where they work, where they are educated, and how they are able to meet the needs of their whānau. So identifying causes of inequity and unweaving the systems that uphold it are our day jobs. And in terms of the future of work, relating it to the kaupapa of today, the question is really how do we systematically improve the conditions to nurture Māori potential in the economy? I will be sharing 2 pieces of research, 2 big pieces of work that look at identifying the issue in terms of Māori and the economy and also provide a possible solution to it. They're called Putei Tua, Our Māori Future Skills Strategy, and No Mai Te Ana Mata, Tomorrow's Skills Report. Really quickly, we take a systemic approach to everything that we do. And we do that because we believe it creates longer lasting, more sustainable change and is a more effective way than dealing with individual problems as they arise. Moving into the Putei Tua research report, what we see currently in terms of Māori being underrepresented in information sectors and overrepresented in manual labour and trade sectors is not a coincidence, but is inequity by design. You'll see that shortly following the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi in the golden days of colonisation, the education system was being used as a tool to intentionally and systematically stream Māori into low-skill manual work. Education should lead the Māori lad to be a good farmer and the Māori girl to be a good farmer's wife. These sorts of mindsets were pervasive in terms of the establishment of educational, training and employment policies of the time. And if this is inequity by design, this is inequity in action. During times of economic crisis, we know that Māori face higher unemployment rates disproportionately compared to the general population. And the thing is there's no problem with our people being in trades, people being in administration work, but being concentrated in particular sectors, skill levels and pay bands mean that our whānau fortunes are particularly sensitive to times of economic change. The policies that work to keep our people in low areas of manual labour mean that we are more vulnerable to harmful disruptive change. But the promising news is that what was designed can be redesigned, and we believe that we can absolutely do better. And why do we need to do better? Because Māori are really good at making babies. Or in technical terms, the population growth between now and 2040 is going to show each decade becoming more and more Māori. In this graph, that lighter colour is our ageing population. So by 2040, that'll be the population growth of those 65 years and over. And of that bottom working age population band, the darker colour, the Māori, will make up over half of that population growth. This means that Māori are the future backbone of the economy of Aotearoa, and we all need to ensure that the future workforce is primed today to meet the needs of our tomorrow. So Putei Tua focuses on rebalancing Aotearoa's workforce, an Aotearoa in which Māori are found in all areas of employment proportional to our working age population. If that report was about using the numbers to identify the issue, we've also done some work around gathering whānau voice, which is just our way of explaining qualitative research, to come up with a potential solution. Inspired by the Foundation for Young Australians work and the report The New Work Mindset, we set out to understand how rangatahi and how pakeke, so young and old people, find navigating the workplace and whether qualifications or lack of qualifications have an impact on this. What we know is that our workplaces are changing, as Tracy mentioned. I'm a Gen Zer, and I promise that I show up to work very differently than my mum did and my grandparents did. And so the question is, how do workplaces not only attract but nurture and keep our young talent? People often talk about the global mega trends of economic change in scary tones of voice, but they also present an opportunity for us to move into an era of a human-centred, strengths-based approach to work. We believe that a huge shift is needed to be made in the mindset and culture that pushes the concept of one qualification and then a job for life to a lifelong commitment to learning and adapting for the sake of a career. What we know is that in the changing future, it'll be more and more important to be agile, adaptable, and to have a portfolio, an array of different skills that will allow us to move safely between sectors, between jobs. And we know that my generation will have, on average, at least 18 jobs across 5 industries in the span of their career. Our studies have shown that being able to add value to the workplace in early career jobs in particularly is just by being human. Relationship building, organisational skills, communication and building relationships are all transferable skills that show the most additional income in early career jobs. So the question really is, how do we get rangatahi to recognise and realise the power of their own skills, beyond their CVs, beyond their school transcripts, and right to the core of who they are and what they bring to organisations and society? A huge theme in our focus groups that we ran with rangatahi was that the lack of a formal qualification, bachelor's level or higher, was not just a barrier to access to employment, but also a sense of confidence and a sense of being able to contribute to a workplace. We also found that it takes the right environment, and as Tracy talked about, an environment where connection is fostered, where value is understood, and where the people are at the heart of everything that an organisation does. But once that is achieved, commitment to career, commitment to workplace is created. So what we've done in No Mai Te Ana Mata Tomorrow Skills is we often tend to think of work spheres in terms of industry. Different jobs grouped by sectors of society that they serve, so manufacturing, hospitality, retail. But this isn't very useful when we're thinking about the actual skills required to do certain jobs. Skills clustering is a method that allows us to group jobs by the similarity of skills required across different jobs, and by doing this we can see how certain skills can help whānau move across industries, within skill clusters, or identify their skill set and where the opportunities are to move into a different skill cluster. Certain skill clusters have higher growth rate than others, and we know that with the global megatrends of automation, globalization, changing the way we work. And so it's about, if you have the skills in one cluster, how can you really harness the power of skill portability to ensure that you are never out of work? This is a quote that we gathered throughout our case studies, which I think really speaks to the heart of leveraging of human skills that create value not only to ourselves and our whānau, but also to our organisations and wider society. I mihi to forestry for my work ethic, I mihi to cooking for sharers and in the marae kitchen for my time management skills. I mihi to tourism for my confidence in public speaking, and I mihi to the aunties, uncles and the people around me who believed I could do something, which gave me courage. This person has an incredible career that I felt very privileged to sit down and listen to throughout our studies, and they really worked themselves up. They are now a executive director, a chairperson of their marae, and it was a real privilege to sit down and hear the human aspect of what we talk about when we talk about transferable skills. So we believe that a skills-based approach to education and employment is one of the many solutions to the skills shortage, to the changing demands in the future of work, and the need for equity in terms of more Māori into high-paying, high-contribution, high-skilled roles. It requires but also encourages true connection in the workplace, which leads us strongly into a human-centred future of work. There is a lot for us to do, but I also think that under this proposed approach, there is a lot for different people to do as well. There's a part for everyone. Under this proposed approach, the responsibility on workers and job seekers is to have an acute awareness and ability to communicate skills, and also skills gaps for upward mobility. The responsibility on employers and businesses is to consider the balance of skills and qualifications when recruiting and to view skills gaps as a training opportunity. The The responsibility on educators is to provide those training opportunities in a way that is fit for purpose and also shift away from a single-minded view of qualification pathways into jobs. And finally, the responsibility on the government is to create and uphold a system which sustains all of the above as seamlessly as possible. 2040, which is the end goal for our current vision, will mark 200 years since the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And we believe that it is a good opportunity for us to honour what our tupuna and our ancestors signed and agreed upon in Waitangi, working into a future of partnership, collaboration, and a vision for a prosperous future for us all. Nā reira, ka tiaki konei tēnā koutou, and it is my privilege to introduce our next speaker, Ishan Brailsford, to the stage. Kia ora tātou.
There we go, back to it. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Ishan Brailsford toku ingoa. I'm pleased to be here today representing the Canterbury Regional Skills Leadership Group and contributing to such a vital conversation. For anyone unfamiliar with regional skills leadership groups, we are locally based and regionally led independent advisory groups identifying and supporting the future skills and workforce needs of our respective regions. I believe it would be remiss of us to be discussing the future of work in our region without acknowledging the significance of our future employers and employees, our rangatahi. Rangatahi will play a core role in the future of our workforce in ensuring that they are supported and equipped with the skills they need to fully engage with our workforce is pivotal to future success in our region. We have cause to be optimistic about our rangatahi in Waitaha, with lower than national rates of rangatahi not in employment, education and training, and slightly higher than national rates of NCEA achievement. Like every region, however, we have our challenges. We know that diversity is increasing steadily in our region. However, we need to ensure that our workforce is making the necessary accommodations to welcome and capitalise on the wealth of diversity in our workplace. The Canterbury RSLG identified that some rangatahi may feel unsafe in workplaces that aren't viewed as welcoming and inclusive spaces for diverse rangatahi. This is especially notable for Māori, ethnic communities, Takatapui, rainbow communities, and tangata whaikaha, disabled rangatahi. Rangatahi want to play their role in supporting our region to grow and develop. We cannot, however, expect them to do this at the expense of silencing who they are. Accommodating diversity in our workforce will require us to consider what employees need to perform at their best. We need to include minority and diverse rangatahi in the design of workforce and workplace culture rather than simply forcing it upon them. In order to benefit from diversity in our workforce, we must empower employees to work as themselves. Virgin Atlantic, one of the largest air carriers in the United Kingdom, has long been championed by young people for their progressive approach to cabin crew uniforms. Virgin does not require the concealment of tattoos and provides female identifying cabin crew with the option of a skirt or shorts in their uniform. This year they took it a step further, dropping gender-based uniforms entirely, adopting a pronoun badge system, and introducing a gender-neutral MX title through their booking systems. After introducing these changes, Virgin saw a 100% increase in applications for cabin crew roles. While detractors may cry that these changes are woke or tokenistic, Virgin's approach inarguably worked in attracting new talent to the airline. While Virgin may not be a Canterbury-based organisation, their dramatic increase in job applications illustrates that empowering employees to be themselves in the workplace has an outsized impact on people's desire to work for an organisation. The appeal of a supportive and inclusive culture in a workplace is clear, and I believe that this will play a pivotal role in attracting, retaining, and benefiting from diverse talent in the future of our workforce. When we consider the history of our region, it should come as no surprise that mental health is an issue for our people, not least our rangatahi. While overcoming traumatic events through formative years has created incredibly resilient rangatahi in our region, we all need support sometimes. When you combine a cohort of rangatahi in need of mental health services with a lack of accessibility and high wait times for these services, there is a very real threat to well-being. We know that access issues for mental health services do not affect all rangatahi equally, as minority rangatahi are less likely to be able to access private professional services. This forces them to hold on and wait until the funded services they require become available. Inconsistencies in accessing mental health services creates a divide, the haves and have-nots of robust mental health. Those who are unable to access the support services they need, when they need them, are at a very real disadvantage as they pursue further education, training, or entering the workforce. Access to mental health services must not be a luxury. We need to work to address accessibility issues in our region now to avoid a future workforce with systemically poor mental health in our region. Work is a critical component of our lives. It gives us structure, routine, and purpose. However, a core element of fulfilment in work for our rangatahi is a passion for the mahi they are undertaking. The Canterbury RSLG has identified that a labour market which is unresponsive to the needs and aspirations of rangatahi drives a lack of passion for participation in the workforce. Many rangatahi are concerned about the state of the world they find themselves in, with climate change, cultural responsiveness, and inclusivity being amongst the leading concerns. Rangatahi are also acutely aware that they stand to inherit a world plagued by these issues. Rangatahi, therefore, are not content to sit in their 9-to-5s watching the world burn. They want their mahi to meaningfully contribute to the issues that they care about. They want to combine their passions and values with their work. They don't want to be forced to exercise these separately. As a result, rangatahi entering the workforce are increasingly drawn to employers and sectors that are actively invested in change. Organisations that wear their values on their sleeve and aren't afraid to take a stand on the issues they care about. In a world where organisations play a significant role on influencing our behaviour and culture, sitting in stilted silence is no longer an option. It is the reality that rangatahi will be the future of our workforce in Waitaha. The question is, how much will we invest to ensure they have the tools and support that they need to facilitate the ongoing success of our region? Ngā mihi nui. I'm now excited for us to continue our discussions on the panel.
Can we just put our hands together? They are 3 amazing presentations. Thank you so much. So we'll have some roving mics going around, and feel free to use the text a question option. We're very high tech here at Christchurch NZ. So can I invite our panellists back to the stage, please? Oh, you're good. Should we grab one for Tracy as well? So while you take your seats, I'll open the questions. So for our panellists, how can employers create an environment that fosters and inspires diverse thinking? What are the key things they need to get right?
I can start if you like, yeah. So I guess I would start from the negative angle, which is what kills diversity. And diversity is killed by culture. So for those of you that haven't heard of him, Dr. Adam Fraser is a really wonderful guy to look up, who's done some work in this space. But the concept of diversity being a policy or a set of investments that you make, often there's an ESG stance that organisations have, where so you've got environmental and social governance opportunities. That is not enough. Actually, if people come into your organisation and say it's cool because there's a headline and you're investing some money and there's a policy that I can align to, but how people treat each other, how you embrace diversity of thought, how you welcome and encourage collaboration and problem solving that's relevant to people isn't real and isn't lived, the culture of your organisation will squash diversity in moments. So you should invest in that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think we often talk about the systemic versus programmatic approach. And when we talk about systemic approaches, it's not just about policies, but it's about changing mindsets and cultures as well. It's about really understanding why you're going about to add value through diversity and really committing to that.
I'm just going to echo everything that my fellow panellists have said. I think when you want to encourage diversity in your workforce, it's really about looking at the basics and making sure that you're nailing the basics. If you as an employer are not taking the opinions or the feelings of your diverse people into account, you aren't going to be able to welcome diversity in the space. How do you treat people when they express their opinions? I think chiefly dissenting opinions. How do you as an organisation deal with people saying, I don't feel safe in this space, these things need to change? Is your default response to get your back up and to say, actually, this is the way our organisation is and we expect you to conform to it? I think when you aren't willing to challenge the status quo, you're going to kill diversity dead in its tracks.
Cool, thanks. Another question from me. I'll keep it going, I'll keep the room moving. So a sector I'm particularly interested in after spending time in San Francisco as the New Zealand Trade Commissioner is tech. Māori and Pacifica are underrepresented in tech, yet there's a massive skills shortage in this area. Why do you think that's happening, and what can we do to change that?
I think I'll have a first jab at it. I think going back to the point around inequity by design, there's a kind of reciprocal approach that happens when there aren't enough Māori currently in the tech sector. Māori don't see themselves represented in that sector and therefore often hesitate to follow that path. I think there's a lot of possible solutions to that, but I think there's partnership that's needed between industry and educators to really get to the core of understanding that degrees, certifications, qualifications are actually creating pathways for Māori and Pacifica, but actually for everyone into the right workplaces. And yeah, I think in general Māori need to see themselves there a lot more in order for them to be attracted to the sector.
Look, from my perspective, I think as an industry, our approach has been to take people out of the communities that they're trying to change. So I'm currently living on Mahia Peninsula, which is beautiful, very remote, hour south of Gisborne. And my privilege was very confronting for me a couple of days ago. So the back road from Mahanga Beach, where I am, to Mahia shop, one shop and a pub, as all good rural towns have, is about a 15-minute drive. And this back road, there's been an increase in caravans on that back road recently. And I looked at it and went, oh, that's so good. Like, people are coming back. They're starting to holiday. And then the second time I drove past it, I thought, that's weird. They're still here. And the third time I realised that is whānau, and many, many whānau living on owned land with multiple families living in 1970 caravans without insulation, double glazing and all of those things. And I was taken aback. And the reason I share that story is, as a technology company, and I can talk about this freely with Datacom because we're very open about it, our response to that would be to say we will create training programs through AWS, Google, Microsoft, whoever it might be, to bring those people into the cities and give them jobs. But actually what Māori Pacifica and any people who are in a state of disadvantage want to do is contribute to the communities that they live in and create opportunities for the families and people that they care about. And so the challenge for us is how do we create roles in technology that are meaningful, not faces on a desk, as an example. How do we create meaningful roles that allow people to contribute to the communities that they care about, and what does that need to look like? So there are multiple programs that are confronting this challenge. Puawai is a very good example where we partner with iwi like Te Arawa out of Rotorua to bring roles into the regions where technology can be applied at a local level. I think it's part of this concept of modern communities. You don't need to take people out of communities in order to give them opportunity.
I think when you look at tech as a sector, you have a real perception problem, and you have the issue that it has been seen for a long time as being for a very specific group of people, for a very specific role in tech. You don't see the diversity that is available in a huge, fast-growing sector. And I think as long as you have that problem with sector perceptions, people can't see themselves in those roles, themselves in those industries. It's very difficult for, especially our diverse rangatahi, to think, okay, I want to do that, because you just don't simply see yourself being in that environment. So I think if there is the work put in to deal with the perceptions, and actually I'll mahi to Chelsea Rapp, who is a fellow member on the Canterbury RSLG, who is heavily involved with the tech sector, and she is putting a lot of effort into perceptions of the tech sector and helping our diverse rangatahi see themselves in these roles. And I think when you see people who are like you in the industry, it makes you feel far more confident and comfortable that it will be a safe place for you, and you actually begin to see yourself in those roles and think that you would be safe there.
Cool, thank you. I'll throw to one of our text questions.
So one of the questions that's just come through is, what advice do you have for schools and educators as they prepare young people for the future of work now?
Good question.
So there's a lot of talk, and Hini Punami talks about it beautifully, but this idea of mindset. I think I actually started life as a primary school teacher about 23 years ago, so this is near and dear to my heart. But I think there's still a perception that you need to get a job. And actually, it's the love of learning that people need to embrace beyond primary and secondary and tertiary school to bring into the workplace. We're going to be confronted with solving more problems in a more rapid way. And so I think rangatahi and tamariki being encouraged and nurtured to be curious and to explore different ways of thinking and solving problems and being empowered to do that is going to be a really rich skill. And it's not about having a growth or a fixed mindset, by the way. There are multiple mindsets by definition. So if you can give your people the skills to understand the content they're working with, is it familiar? Is it unfamiliar? Is it simple? Is it complex? And the interaction they're trying to have, are they discovering or delivering? Are they doing it alone or are they doing it with others? And access the parts of their brain that allow them to focus within that particular task, you will do them a great service. But fundamentally nurturing that curious spirit and love of learning and encouraging that as a tool for life is one of the greatest gifts you can give young people.
Yeah, I won't reiterate those points. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Tracy just said. I think there's also another element in terms of learning doesn't just stop when you leave secondary school. And we often forget about pakeke and our workforce that are middle-aged, late career, that will also face challenges in terms of disruption to their workplaces, and what are the options available, accessible to our pakeke to be able to train, upskill, learn different things so that they can pivot mid-career, late career, which I think is going to be a very, very important thing going into the future. As Tracy just said, things will be changing. The rate of change will become even more and more rapid, and so how do we not only look after rangatahi and tamariki, but ensure that learning is a lifelong journey that never ends and always works to ensure people are in the best place possible to contribute to workplaces.
I think the most important thing that we can be showing our rangatahi in primary and tertiary secondary education is practicing tolerance and practicing accepting, understanding and welcoming people who aren't like us, who are different. And that speaks to minorities, it speaks to disabled rangatahi. How do we imprint upon our young people that not everyone's going to be like us, not everyone's going to agree with us, but that everyone has a valuable opinion, everyone brings value to the table, and to be able to teach that young so that when our young people get to the workforce, they're able to start from scratch and not be starting from a point of prejudice and starting from a point of working together for meaningful outcomes.
Darren, you've got a question? I'll just...
In a world where a lot of businesses are grappling with the challenges of flexible working arrangements, I'd like to get your viewpoint on that, because in some industries are obviously more challenging than others to provide flexible working arrangements, but some of the tech companies you mentioned are actually investing billions in bricks and mortar to create offices to bring people back into the office. So, you know, we've sort of got this alternative viewpoint of the tech companies investing in creating bricks and mortar offices, yet many of us businesses are, you know, working with trying to provide flexible working arrangements. What's your viewpoint on the future workplace?
Sure. Great question. So it's a lot to unpack actually, but what I would say is there's two things actually. The first thing is fundamentally human beings are social creatures. It doesn't matter if we're introverted or extroverted, there is a need for connection. There is a lot of research going into the early onset dementia, which you might have read about at the moment, which points to when people stop working and stop interacting with each other, actually there's parts of our brains that become less active, and that has a really detrimental neurological effect. And so when we think about flexible working, future of work, we need to acknowledge there is something in there around social connectedness. If you want to have a fully remote workforce, you need to invest heavily in how you are creating a connected culture. How are you connecting people to each other, to your organisational purpose, to those that they work with and those that they serve. And so there is definitely a social connectedness element. I think the other thing that we would say is well-being sits at the forefront of this. How many of you have got policies around or practices around well-being that acknowledge the fact that you will be seeing your workforce in 2D and that you'll have a series of 30-minute meetings where someone knows the topic and they turn up and you see a head and shoulders version of them and you go, that was cool, Tracy looked super happy today and she loved what she was talking about, and then you know what happens once I hang up from Teams or Zoom or whatever it might be. So there is some complexity around how you create connected culture and how you promote well-being in a 2D world. The reason for the bricks and mortar approach with a number of the tech companies is twofold. Firstly, there is a societal impact when you take people out of central cities. Tauranga Moana is about to have $1 billion over the next 10 years invested in the city redevelopment to grow that city and to bring people back in, because they believe that the community will thrive and they'll be able to solve some societal issues by having people together. So I think the tech companies are saying actually we have a social responsibility to bring people back in to support the surrounding communities. But fundamentally it's driven by this need for connected culture and well-being. So to answer your question in a very roundabout way, whatever option you choose needs to align to your company purpose and your values, but you need to ensure that you have got deep, rich, meaningful strategies in place to care for your people and make them resilient to the change that will happen as the people that you serve and their expectations shift over time.
Yeah, that's a hard act to follow. No, you're good. I think there's a Future of Work tripartite forum, a partnership between the government, the Council for Trade Unions and Business New Zealand, and I sit on the Māori advisory group for that, and we've been taking the approach and testing out with a few Māori technology experts around the idea of tech and service to human connection, which is perfectly aligned to everything Tracy was just saying. But as a personal reflection, I think I had a baby 6 months ago, and I was nervous to come back to work, but also lucky enough, privileged enough to be part of an organisation that wanted me to keep working if I wanted to, and that were really able to be flexible around whether I stay home with my baby and work, whether I come into the office. And so that kind of arrangement where it's human-centred, speaks to individual need, and technology is used in service to that kind of idea has worked really well for me in terms of my own personal journey. So yeah.
While it's, I know that you weren't alluding to this in your question, I am aware that there's a very widely held attitude that young people, as a collective, want to work from home, and that the reason that they want to work from home is so that they can do a little bit of work, do a couple meetings, go on social media, and then have a nap for the rest of the day. Now, while I'm sure there are some who do this, I think we really have to get away from this, that the future of work is remote and that young people are just bound to abuse this system. I think it's a really damaging perception. And I think flexibility will be important for the fact that work to sort of for the future needs to adapt to the way that people live, and the way that people live is increasingly changing. And ultimately, for an organisation, if an employee wants to take their half-hour lunch break going for a walk in the reserve near their house, or sitting at the table, with their fellow employees having lunch, why should that matter? It should be about the output, and if they're able to deliver the same output that they would in the office, oftentimes actually more output because they're in an environment they feel safe in. How they choose to use the time that isn't working time, the time around their day, really is irrelevant.
Yeah, really interesting comments. I'll just add, it's about being really intentional about what the workplace is for, and that will be different in the future. So it won't be 9 to 5, it'll be how do humans connect, create and win. Got a question at the back, Jamie, if you want to move.
One thing you mentioned at the start was that Christchurch is such a massive place for startups and small businesses, and when you're in that space, you're very aware that there's a lot of pressure to build an awesome working environment. You're working off with a lot of other young people who might be their first job. You're like, oh cool, I want to create this culture. But it's quite overwhelming. So what are some first steps that small businesses and startups can take to foster a workplace that is diverse and has these great cultures, communications and policies in place?
I'm nearly out of words for this morning, to be honest. But I think in terms of I think it just goes back to creating that real culture of connection. I think whether there's, an organisation of 200 with all the resource behind them, or you're a team of 3 that have started out in your garage, I think connection, collaboration, understanding what people bring to the table, and really making a concerted effort to ensure that people feel safe within their workplaces. And feel excited to come to work, like Ashan was saying, fulfilled. I think those are all key things that whether you're a startup or a large company, that you can really provide for your employees.
I think purpose is really important. So there is a wonderful framework that was developed by a guy called Clay Christensen, who was a Harvard lecturer. He started a consultancy, as most Harvard lecturers do, but he came up with this concept of jobs to be done. And what's really neat about that is it's not what is your job, startup organisation, it's what is your customer's job to be done. What are they trying to do? I think the risk with a lot of startups is that you end up in a self-fulfilling prophecy of the idea, and you lose line of sight to the broader impact or the purpose that you're trying to create. And if you want to build culture and connection and create meaningful work for people, you really need to have line of sight to what? Like, why does it matter in the first place? Partly because that's what will differentiate you from your competitors and help you disrupt, which is awesome. But partly because it allows people to see themselves with their own skills and their own lived experience within the purpose of the role that you've asked them to do or the function that they're trying to perform. So starting right back with what is the thing that we are creating to serve those, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, will open you to greater parts of innovation, but it will allow people to connect more richly to the idea that you're trying to bring to life.
I'm going to echo Hene Ponamu here and say that I think it's really important about making sure that there's the accessibility for expression of culture in the workplace. Do you as an organisation have a culture where an intern can say to the CEO or the boss, their GM, it is a holiday in my culture, it's a cultural holiday, it's holy, it's Matariki, it's Eid, it's Diwali, and I want our workplace, our staff, to do something to celebrate that. I want us to get together and to have a celebration that is something that's near and dear to me. And what's the engagement to that? Do they feel belittled? Do they feel not taken seriously? Do they feel like their culture isn't the same value to the predominant one in the organisation? So I think that approachability to senior leadership, to say, this is who I am, this is what I want to express, what's possible here.
Cool. Thank you. We've got one last question. So down the front with Tanya, here, Jamie.
Kia ora koutou. I'm going to be the most controversial in the room as an employer. As an employer, there's a huge expectation here on what my role is. Yet I could have saved to start up an organisation. I'm accountable to a whole heap of people, whether a board, I'm accountable to stakeholders, whatever I'm trying to produce for to change culture in a bigger community. And yet I have to deal with people's feelings, have to deal with all this stuff, need to understand gender diversity, need to do that. Yet actually, where is the support for the employer? I get the support for rangatahi, I get the support for all of that, but where is the mechanism for the employer to go somewhere and go, wow, what am I supposed to be doing? You know, there's all this expectation on both sides for us just to have a kaupapa to work to. And we have this expectation on rangatahi, and don't get me wrong, I know our rangatahi and the needs I've got to myself, and they're out the gate. But actually, I feel sorry for their employers. But where is that support and mechanism of trying to create the perfect world for the perfect business for the economic change?
I think that's such a brilliant question. And I think, you know, for the context of where we are today, you're totally right. I mean, we have been speaking a lot to employees and what young people need to be successful employees. Like I said in my, investing in change section, I think the real difficult thing here is that everyone wants to come to the table for the most part. I think, we can say there are rangatahi who don't want to engage, employees who don't want to engage, and there are employers who don't want to engage as well. But I think for the most part, when we sort of look at the predominant group, everyone wants to engage, everyone wants their business to do well, employees want the business to do well, employers want their employees to feel safe and succeed. Everyone wants the best, everyone wants to come together for those outcomes. And the sad reality of it is finding the way to make that all happen is really hard, and there probably isn't enough support for either side for that to happen. There should be, and I think the way through that is for people to be able to have discussions, for employers and employees to feel safe in being frank with each other. And I think that comes with when you both feel that you can freely express who you are, have a fair conversation, and listen to each other in a way that is, free from judgment and bias.
I think it's a wonderful question. And actually the reason we did the research in the first place, so I don't have a good answer for you apart from saying it will be different for every organisation, but fundamentally it takes a village to raise a child and it takes a city to care for adults. Like we are complex people, and so the networks that we create as business leaders and across communities, and the more knowledge we share, will help navigate the future of work. But it's not a static question. When I go and talk to people about this stuff, they're like, so what do we need to do? It's like, there isn't a silver bullet. This is a journey. It will continue to change and will continue to be disrupted. So having those strong foundations in your organisational purpose and reaching out across networks to share ideas and understand those things, being open to research and open to change is hugely important. I think being humble and open with your people that you don't necessarily have the answers and inviting them to solve that with you is core. But in terms of, is there a forum that is set up that will give you an answer? Well, no, it wouldn't be practical, right? Like this is part of the evolution of work. It will continue to change. So if there isn't a way for businesses in Ōtautahi to connect, to share learnings and create conscious decisions together, then maybe that's an initiative that would be a good thing for this group to kick off.
Definitely. I'm going to call it. We've gone a little bit over time, but there are some amazing questions we didn't get to on tech, so apologies for that. But the kōrero around this needs to continue. It's a really important subject. So thank you for your time today. This is the last of our Economic Insights breakfast. We'll be back next year with having a more broader partnership. We're going to include Research First and the Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to bring you a broader range of economic insights. But wishing you and your whānau a happy festive season. It's coming up very quickly. And thank you for coming and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.